Man, I've never had a delay before. There we go.
There we go.
Hey guys, welcome back. I have with me my good friend Stephen today of the BG Cast podcast. Stephen has been on a profound spiritual journey since his awakening in 2008. A dedicated Kundalini yogi, boxer, and truth seeker, he explores consciousness, hidden realities, and the unseen forces shaping our existence. Today, we're going to be discussing and diving into the mysteries of the Elohim Christos Founders, our soul's purpose in this incarnation, and how our higher selves, angels, and out-of-body experiencers guide us from beyond. Stephen, I'm so glad you're here today. I've been excited about this. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Michelle. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this conversation myself, and I think we're going to dive into a lot of very interesting things, and let's see where it all takes us.
Yeah, I'm like, honestly, I get excited every time before I do a podcast, but we started having some discussions behind the scenes this week, and we didn't get to talk as much as we would have liked to, so I'm glad we're doing that now. But you've left me on edge, like with some of the stories you told me, and I'm excited that we get to share that with the audience today.
Yeah, same here. I mean, yeah, we can go wherever you want. I don't mind sharing anything. Ask away, and I will do my best to deliver it in the way that it's meant to be delivered.
So maybe just for those that didn't get to hear on the phone call, maybe you could tell everybody a little bit about some of these spiritual awakenings and out-of-body experiences and kind of how they escalated for you.
All right. Well, so as Michelle said in the beginning, I woke up at a very young age. I woke up in 2008 at the age of 20, before it was cool. And, ever since I ended up waking up then, it was a very interesting incident. I'd gotten into some trouble in my life. Prior to that, I wasn't doing a lot of the right things. I was going down a lot of bad roads. And, I just got to the point where I was like, no, I need to do something different this time. I have to do something different this time around. I need to revamp my life. So I've always been a very deeply spiritual person. I've always been this way. I just had to kind of realize and remember that I've always been this way, just like it's the case with a lot of us who are awakened. We've been this way our whole lives. It's just coming into the realization that this is who we are. And, I had always had a profound belief in God and the divine. I just thought all of the organized religions that were available to us at the time had gotten it wrong. There was something wrong there. And in this awakening, I ended up, finding things like Gnosticism, Buddhism, Taoism, Jainism, the Vedic scriptures, a lot of different spiritualities that really took into account the gray in this world, because that was my issue, with a lot of the modern organized religions, is they're very exoteric and they're very black and white, and they don't take into account, at least not in the obvious way, the internal, the esoteric, the gray in this existence. And so ever since then, like I said, I jumped into the esoteric Marianas Trench and immersed myself in it, and it developed over the years, and of course I had to come to understand that I had had entity contact since a very young age. There's a lot of things, a lot of different experiences that actually happened to me up until the point that I was like 14 years old. And of course, then, by that time, the conditioning that is placed on you ever since you're born in this reality, the constant conditioning that is jammed into your head kind of started to set in, and I kind of lost connection. The connection was always there, but I lost touch with it. And through the spiritual work that I've done, over the course of this 17 going on 18 years, I rekindled that connection and I opened the doorway to this entity contact. And how it all kind of escalated, I didn't really have any profound entity contact until my late 20s, early 30s. And at first it was just, the machine elves. It was like, these different spiritual entities that I would come across. And then what ended up happening is I got into a mix with some trickster entities. Of course, at the time when I started experiencing these other beings, I was just astonished. I was, enamored that I was actually, because that's been one of my biggest things ever since I was a kid. I always wanted to meet something from another world, another dimension, but I took some advice they gave me and ended up kind of messing up my life a little bit. And then after that, I was like, okay, I was obviously dealing with some trickster entities. I'm going to bar myself off from entity contact for a little bit. And then a few years after that, I started working with Hanuman. I allowed Hanuman, the monkey god, the Vedic monkey god, into my energetic sphere. I started working with him. And the biggest thing I'm going to say to everybody here is Hanuman's a great energy to work with if you choose to work with him. He's very loving. He's very benevolent. He wants nothing but the best for you. So if that is like an energy that you're considering working with, I highly recommend working with Hanuman. He has done me solid. And then after that, things started to escalate. And they all started to escalate in June of 2022. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a big believer in entheogenic medicine. I do make my own DMT. I do, cultivate the entheogens and things like that. So, in June of 2022, I just made like a fresh batch of DMT. And, I just got done with my morning training, my morning rites, my Kriya, all of that. And, I was in the right mind and I was in the right mindset. So I decided I was going to go in. I was like, you know what? Today's the day we're going to go in. And I remember I'm sitting there and I go to, inhale the hit. And as I'm pulling it in, I'm holding it in. It is coming on faster and stronger than it ever has before. And I'm sitting there going like, oh my God, like this is going to be different. And as soon as I thought those words, reality decompartmentalized around me. It was completely obliterated away. And these 7 very tall human-like beings that had wings were surrounding me. Jason, I'm an Earwood user too. Trust me, I know all about Earwood. I just wanted to say that real quick. But these 7 very angelic beings are surrounding me, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, holy crap! I actually died this time. Holy crap, dude. Like I died and like, this is it. And then I remember, so I'm sitting in this basement actually, that's right behind me right here. And I feel this water dropping on me and there's no plumbing running through any of this. There was no leak or anything. And I remember like, I go, where's this water coming from? I thought for myself. And then that's when they spoke. And when they spoke to me, the best thing I can call it is like an emotional telepathy. I heard what they were saying in my chest. I felt the vibration of what they were saying in my chest, and I felt the emotion that was conveyed with what they were saying in my chest. And they uttered the words, Stephen, the water is a medium between the densities. This is how we could come to you and we could communicate with you. And I remember I'm sitting there going like, I'm in complete astonishment. I'm like, holy crap, like this is actually happening to me right now. Like this is the thing that I've wanted the most in my life for a long time is actually, I got to act correctly was like the first like thing that came into my mind. I was like, okay, well, what do you want to talk to me about? And they said, we want you to come with us. And I was like, okay, take me away. So we ended up traveling to what I call the Gnostic Garden of Eden. So for those of you who are familiar with the Gnosticism and the human creation story in Genesis out of the secret book of John, humans were originally created in the heavenly realms, and then they were brought here. There was no creation of humans on earth just strictly. They were created in the higher dimensions first, then brought down. And I was sitting in this realm, and I kid you not, like you could feel the love of source consciousness like permeating this realm. I didn't want to leave. I was like, dude, just leave me here. I'm good. You can just leave me here for all eternity. I'm good to go. And I remember I'm looking at this crystalline city that is surrounded by these flowing green pastures. And they had Yggdrasils, trees of life, all planted around this city. And I remember I'm like just sitting here looking at this. And I'm looking at the city and I see these humans walking around this city, people just like you and I, just walking around this city. And I'm just like, man, this is something else. And then all 7 of them turned and looked at me and said, Stephen, don't you remember? And I was like, remember what? They said, you're from here. You decided to go back along with many others. And you decided to go back and help with what's going on in the earth realm at this point in time. Let me answer this real quick. It is very important, Don. Very, very important that you state your intention and you are authentic in your intention. Because, like I was talking about on the show with Sam, you're held accountable to your awareness. So you're aware that these are spiritual tools and you're going to be held accountable to it. I'm just letting you know that. So, but nonetheless, they were like, Stephen, don't you remember you're from here? And when you're done doing what you're doing there, helping assisting on the earth plane, you're going to come back here. And I remember at that point in time, it was like a bolt of lightning. I call it the lightning bolt from God, like shot into my being. And then I was unified with my existence on the outside of here and with my existence here. And I had all of these memories kind of start flooding to me. And then I remember I looked at them and I was like emotional. I was like, dude, thank you. Like, oh my goodness, like this makes sense now. And they were like, well, we want to show you something else before you go. And I was like, okay. And then they showed me how manufactured the false matrix reality is. And I'm not going to lie, that kind of broke me a little bit to see how manufactured it was. Because I believe that I've always believed it was manufactured. I knew it was fake, but to see the extent of it, to see how faked it is, that's what got me. I was like, oh my God, it's like this. And it was deep and it was very, I went back to the spiritual drawing board after I go back to the spiritual drawing board at least a few times every year. And then this experience also showed me that my consciousness really creates reality, because as I came back into my body and reality was putting itself back together, it put itself back together wrong. And I remember I was looking and I was like, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. That's not how that's supposed to be. And then as soon as I thought that, it shifted and put itself back together the way it was supposed to be. And I was just like, oh my God, dude, like that was a lot right there for me. And of course, like, after this experience, I put it on the shelf. I was like, this was really cool. Like, this was awesome. You know what I mean? And we're going to visit this at a later date once we can kind of integrate it all. But here we go again, a year after, almost a year to the day of the first experience. It was a Friday. I was coming home. I had some mushrooms, right? And I was like, okay, look, like I'm going to do 1.75 grams. It's a Friday. I'm not trying to try too hard. I just want to go meditate. I want to, just kind of like just embellish myself in the silence for a little bit, all that. So for those of you who have taken mushrooms, the average length of the experience is about 4 to 6 hours. And by the 3.5 hour mark, they're winding down. At the 3.5 hour mark of this experience, it didn't wind down. It started getting more intense, which I didn't understand. I was like, holy crap. And it started getting like almost DMT intense. Crazy. And I was like, okay, like, I looked at my wife and I was like, I'm going to go lay down on the couch. Something weird is going on. And I was like, so I go and I lay down on the couch. And the best thing I can describe what happened next is there was a temporal pause. They took the slide of time that I was in and they pulled it out of the collective perspective of time, and they suspended it in their own perspective of time or their own density, whatever it is. And then this entity came out of the wall, out of my living room wall, and it was an Elohim. It looked very similar to the first entities that I encountered with. And again, we were communicating with that emotional telepathy. And I understood it this time because of the last time. So I started communicating back with it. And it told me, Stephen, you have to remember. Here we go again, the remembering coming out. The remembering. And I was like, remember what? And he said, you are an Elohim. You chose to come back here with many other people, and were many others, and to help assist us on the earth plane. I remember I looked at it and I communicated it with the emotional telepathy, and I said, okay, you guys said that last time. I said, I'm not trying to be ungrateful. I said, but you're going to have to give me a little bit more to go off of this time. And so then it proceeded to give me a complete life's breakdown. Okay, a complete life's breakdown on why my life is the way it was, why I chose all of this stuff for myself. why a lot of these instances happen to me in my life, and explained, because you are of the Elohim spiritually, and because you are of this frequency, if you encounter somebody who is not ready to experience your frequency, it's going to manifest as a dislike towards you on the surface. And that's what happens with a lot of us. That's why, you know, if anybody out there who's on their spiritual evolution, you just meet that one person that doesn't like you for no reason. That's exactly what's happening. Is your frequency is, they're not ready for it, and it's manifesting on the surface as a dislike towards you. So, and it started giving me, like, I mean, dude, this thing knew details about my life. Like, it was just crazy. It was crazy to me. And I remember I sat there and I got emotional, and I looked at it, and I communicated with the emotional telepathy. I was like, and then in that moment, I realized I was talking to my higher self. That's who I was communicating with at that time. And I said, I want to thank you for this. This is really something I need to think about and I need to take in. But I said, I think you could be right. And I remember when I said that, it got emotional itself. Like, it almost looked like it teared up a little bit. And it looked at me and it said, Stephen, we never want you to worry. We're always around the corner if you need us. And I looked at it and I said, okay. And then it ended up disappearing back through my wall. My slide of time I was in got freaking placed back in the, and I kid you not, I looked at my phone after this experience and not a minute had passed by. It was the same fucking time that I went to go lay on my couch than when I got back from this experience. I was like, holy crap. And then at that point I was like, okay, I have to start looking into this a little bit more seriously. You know, I have to start taking this seriously. So then now the communication started without the psychedelics. They started communicating with me in different ways. And the reason why I trust these entities, and I just want to throw this out there, because when you experience entities, here's a good way to know if you can trust what they're saying or not. Every time they come into my energetic sphere, the first thing they do is lean into me about all the stuff I'm messing up on. That's the first thing they do. They come in and they're like, dude, what in the fuck? Like, you know, like, what are you doing? Like, but it's like it's in a tough love way. You know what I mean? It's not like they're being malicious and like reaming into me. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, they'll lean into me like an older brother, like a father or something like that. You know, they kind of scold me, but then after that, what they do is they start to teach me. They start to help me heal, and they start to give me a little bit of tidbits of information, not like any future predictions or things like that. They've already told me that's not what they're about. They said your consciousness controls that. We're not gonna predetermine anything for you, but this is some of the insights we can give you on your origins, your nature, and things like that. So that's what they do for me. And they don't stroke my ego. They don't tell me I'm special. They don't love bomb me. And if you ever encounter an entity and they're doing that to you, it's probably a good idea you don't mess with that entity and you seal them off away from you. But then the communications continued, you know, without the psychedelics. And then they would come back on the psychedelics. Like, there was one time where I took a microdose and they came into my energetic sphere. And the best thing I can describe to you that they did was they poured a vat of this liquid, super golden, hyperfractaline geometry into my crown chakra. And through this vat of this which was a language. So that's one of the other things too, when you're experiencing these altered states or these heightened states of consciousness, whether through sober means or entheogenic means, language starts to change form. You can get visual language, you can get a numerical language, you can get symbolic language. And, you know, language is way more than the spoken word, you know. And they poured this vat of this golden hyperfractal and geometry into my crown chakra, and I channeled this message out. And the message is this: the more we understand, the more our reality shifts. And what I mean by that is the more we understand our true nature and the conscious nature of this reality, you know, and I call it inner standing, honestly, because it's an internal understanding that is going to be unique to you. It's not, you know, the way I understand it might not be the way that Michelle understands it. The way I understand it might not be the way Don understands it. But, you know, we all have our own unique way of understanding. I definitely want to talk to Cosmic Voice once I'm done, because she has some interesting things she's saying.
Yeah.
But
It's my friend Phil in New Zealand. He's freaking awesome. You'll like Phil.
awesome. Nice to meet you, man. Nice to meet you. And then so they came back to me, and then they even started coming to some of my friends, like the woman Sam I had on my show back a couple weeks ago, Samantha Consciously. They even came to her and was like, dude, you got to get him to remember more. And I'm like, why are you going to other people now? But nonetheless, this past experience I had about 3 weeks ago was the icing on the cake, and it was the biggest, the experience was the largest magnitude experience I've had with these beings, and the weird nature of reality altogether. So I ended up going on a vacation with my family to Captiva Island, and then you showed me that there is a Stargate in Sarasota, which is actually very close to Captiva Island through ocean. To get there by driving, you have to go reroute and land. But if you're looking at where Sarasota is located and Captiva is, they're actually pretty close to each other if you're looking by sea. And I remember I got to this island, and this island was very strange. It had very interesting architecture. I almost want to say like almost Tartarian in nature. Some of this architecture it was very interesting. And I remember, one of the whole things that's happening the whole time up until the experience, and then it stopped completely, which was weird, was I was getting decimated by mosquitoes. So I live in Colorado. It's very dry out here. We get mosquitoes out here if there's standing water around, but if there's none of that, because it's so freaking dry, it normally evaporates. We don't get mosquitoes. So it's a very rare thing for me to get. So I'm getting eaten alive. But of course, it is a proven Darvo conspiracy that mosquitoes do collect blood and bring them to different areas, and bring the blood to, whether it's being used for a type of technology, whether it's being used for a Stargate, these mosquitoes will bring the blood there. And I remember I'm getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, and I'm sitting there. And of course, what my plan to do with it is I brought a half ounce of mushrooms with me. I'm working on becoming an entheogenic facilitator. So I was going to facilitate an experience for my family. I was there with my mom, my brother, his lady, and their kids. But kids weren't involved. Obviously, it was just them. So and they wanted to do it. So I was like, okay, I'll bring some down with me. And so this was the day of the experience, and I remember there was a lot of low-flying Black Hawk helicopters all over Captiva Island. They were flying super low. They were doing these very interesting flybys. I remember I'm looking at this, and I'm like, man, what is going on? And, but nonetheless, we continue on. And now it is the time where we, actually ingest the mushrooms. So I ended up having a little bit more than everybody else on accident. This is just how it went down. Well, what had happened is I didn't have a scale with me. I couldn't bring anything with a lithium battery. I didn't even have time. So I know that a tablespoon is about a gram. Like if it's ground up, you kind of compare. So I grabbed a tablespoon, and I'm going to give the doses to everybody, and they're only taking like half of it. And I'm like, okay. And then I would just pop the rest in my mouth, and then I would just freaking go. And so I ended up, I don't know, I maybe ended up taking over the course of maybe 2.5, 3 grams potentially. But how the experience started to manifest, and there's a lot of really interesting things that kind of happened that night. But at first, my brother was starting to have a bad experience. I had to end up talking him down off of that. We ended up making it working. But then this is where shit got weird. And I remember I'm sitting, mind you, there's very little light pollution out here. And you can see the stars very well. And we had a sun deck on this house we were renting, and I'm sitting up there with my mom. And I remember, I kid you not, all of the stars in the sky just vanished. And then there were these flying machines that were flying around. As far as what they were, I couldn't tell. But I remember I looked at my mom, and I looked at her, and I said, "Are you seeing this right now?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm seeing this." And I said, she goes, "It may be a plane." I was like, "I don't think so. Have you ever seen a plane fly like that?" And she was like, "No." And I'm like, "I'm going to say this is what it is, what we're experiencing right now." And I remember this is at the point where things started getting really heavy for me. And I ended up going downstairs into the bedroom I was staying in. And I remember I ended up laying in the bed. And as soon as I did that, I was taken away from this reality. I was taking into another density. And there they stood, the Elohim. And they were standing there and they greeted me. And this time, they didn't really have anything to lean into me about, which was kind of interesting because they kind of gave me the nod, like, you're doing great. And they're like, this is what we need you to remember, Stephen. And once you fully realize this and you fully remember this, it's going to change your world. And it has. They said, not only are you spiritually of the Elohim, you are physically. It is in your blood, they said to me. And they said, all of the true humans that are walking this planet have our blood within them. You are not only spiritually one of us, you are also a physical descendant. And what you're going to do is you're going to remember this fully and you're going to channel it into your current avatar. And I remember I'm looking at them and it all makes sense to me at this point. It all makes sense to me. And I'm like sitting there and I'm looking at them and I'm like, this is what you wanted me to remember. And they were like, yes, this is exactly what we wanted you to remember. And I remember I was like, oh my goodness. And they're like, well, we have something we want to show you. And then what they started to show me was Earth could potentially be some kind of living ship, or there is a living conscious ship that intersects with this realm, this planet, whatever you want to view it as, in these certain remote locations. And this is how they are able to do these things and able to come in through these, either these stargates or these remote locations. Because this is the thing about these entities, especially the negative ones in the parasitic class, they thrive off plausible deniability. There's a strict non-interference policy. They have to be very plausibly deniable in their approach. And of course, you go to this remote island. So I don't think there's a trickster element to this, and there's a reason why. And I explained that a little bit earlier because these beings are very honest with me. Like I was saying, every time they come into my sphere, the first thing they do is lean into me about everything I'm messing up on. And then after they lean into me, they get very loving and they're like, listen, we just want to help you. This is why we're doing this. We want to help you. And they're not wrong. They're brutally honest about everything that they say. And, you know, and I know myself that these are things that I need to work on. And, but anywho, so after that, after looking at the living ship, I remember, so when I was a child, I used to have these, what I would call spiritual friends. And I remember them from like the age of 3 to 5. And they would come in my room. They would play like peekaboo with me. They would like sit on my bed and like hold my hand, and they would like be like hug me. Sometimes they would like tickle me, you know, just to be funny and things like that. And but they ended up coming into this density, or they were there. And I remember like I started to like cry a little bit because I was like, oh my God, I haven't seen you guys since I was like 5 years old. Like, oh my God. And it was like almost like a little bit of a happy reunion. And they just told me, you know, we're always here. You know, we're always looking over you. We're always watching out for you, you know, and we can only do so much because of everything, but we've never left. And that was really interesting to see, really interesting to get to know. And then I remember, you know, they ended up putting me back. And at this point, dude, I was like, oh my God, like I was literally the next day, I didn't really even say a word. But what's really interesting about this experience is the night this all happened, my mom woke up the next morning. She showed me they have a newspaper down there in Captiva Island. There was UFO sightings all over the island that night. And then, yes, UFO sightings all over the island. And then the other thing too, my brother's lady, Melissa, none of this stuff is on her radar, right? Like she's very much, none of this stuff. She comes up to me and she calls me broski. She's like, yo, broski, because she's Cuban. And I'm like, what's up, Melissa? She goes, I gotta tell you, last night, for whatever strange reason, I was compelled to turn on TV shows about aliens. She ended up taking the mushrooms too. And she goes, she was telling me, she's like, this stuff's not normally on my radar. I don't usually watch this kind of stuff. Yeah. And she goes, but the first thing I did once I laid in bed is I turned on a TV show about UFOs and aliens. And like, I looked at my brother and he goes, yeah, we both watch TV shows about UFOs and aliens. And it's crazy, man. But after that, it has dramatically changed my life to know this. And here's the thing about it is I approach it very differently than a lot of the community. You're never going to hear me introduce myself on a podcast that I am BG Cast, the Angel Seed. You are never going to see me posted on my social media profiles. You're never going to see me do that because why? Number one, this for me is a very sacred thing. This knowledge, this remembering, this realization is very sacred. And two, it's made me more humble out of all things. I mean, I don't feel like going and shouting this to the rooftops. All this has done is it makes me want to become the highest quality human being that I possibly can be. And so Jason...
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
I had to laugh at that. I had to laugh at that. But,
every show Jason gets me, man. He's hilarious.
No, Jason's good people, man. He's always on Don's show. He's always on mine. It's
yeah,
good
I
to
like
see him
Jason.
here, man. Good to see you, man. And but it's made me more humble and like and like what does this mean for me is that I have to channel this completely into Steven, who I am now. I have to channel it all the way into who I am now. It's not going to be some persona or some facade. It's almost like making the two become one. That's the best way I can describe it. And ever since then, they're still communicating with me, and how they communicate with me is they do it through emotion. They do it through symbols, because I'm a big believer that symbolism is the true language of this universe. And we can get into that if you want a little bit as well. And they communicate with me through songs, actually. And every time there's this song that they play. It's by this group I listen to, but it's called Watching You. And like clockwork, if I'm having a rough day, if I'm feeling kind of down, or I'm not exactly feeling 100% great, or I might be sad for something or whatever, like clockwork, this song comes on always. And it, like, especially on the real bad days, it'll be I'll go on to turn on my mix, especially when I go to the gym or like in boxing. And does he think they called them? Don, what do you mean by that? Emphasize a little bit, but it comes on like clockwork, man. I'll even just throw on my mix, like if I'm in the morning at the gym or I'm boxing, dude, and I'll put on my earphones, I'll throw on the mix. And if I'm having like a particularly rough start to the day, that's the first song that comes on, and that's how they let me know. They let me know they're watching me and they're watching over me. So it's been a very interesting experience, Michelle, and I still have yet to really understand the magnitude of what it all means. So I'm still kind of processing it a little bit.
Yeah, there's so much that you said. I'm gonna let you answer Don's question real quick,
yeah,
and then I'll respond to you.
So I definitely think it's possible, and what I do think happened is once they saw it was my blood that the mosquitoes had collected, I think that was when it was go time for them. I think maybe that was a test. And yes, we can touch on that a little bit, Cosmic Voice, on the symbolism. I've done 2 episodes on it and how to understand it. But yeah, no, what was your question, Michelle?
Yeah, well, at first I want to say thank you for sharing that with us. There's so much every time I've had quite a few friends that, they talk to me privately and they share experiences with me, and I keep them confidential. I let them decide if they want to share them or not. But there was so much that you said the first time you told me this story, and then to hear it the second time, there was so much more that connected with me and my experience that I had. I've had experiences since I was literally the day my mom died when I was 9 years old. I was told I was always clairvoyant, and I used to creep my parents out when I was a kid. I told them I remembered being born, and I'd say stuff all the time, and my mom would be like, "Get out of my head." But it started the day that she passed away. I had a full vision and saw what was going to happen. And the last words I had between her and I were not very pleasant, because I was upset she was leaving, and I told her she wasn't going to come back. And this was something that happened to me periodically right before a traumatic event, going through my teenage years. Now, it stopped when I turned 18 as far as it being a trauma-based thing. But what it all came to was in February, one night randomly, it was about 11:45 at night, I started channeling what I believe was the earth. And so when you talk about it being a living ship, this was a full-blown 45 minutes of visuals along with my heart chakra vibrating so hard. I thought I was being pulled out of my body. And I had this like kaleidoscope almost vision of like eagle eye view and my own vision. And it was like I had multiple sets of eyes. And the emotions that were coming through were more intense than anything emotionally I've ever experienced here. And I do believe that the earth is totally conscious. And I saw like even like the creation of like the Milky Way. And I'm very careful how I say this. I didn't see all the creation of all the galaxies of all the universes. This was very specific. It was this solar system. And I did see what you're describing as being seated here. We were not just brought up out of the ground. Like I saw a consciousness in all of us, and like we had different types of bodies even and different capabilities that I do believe through certain practices that we have the ability to bring back now.
100%,
But
100%.
I think it's a lot of the programming and other things they've done to try to disconnect that from us.
I would agree. One of the things I think you and I talked about is, the whole crouching tiger, hidden dragon thing. And, and this is the one thing I'm going to say, I understand what you're talking about, these different type of bodies, these different type of abilities, and how we can actually unlock these things is actually through internal alchemy. And there's many different types of internal alchemy. Like I know Jay's big on qigong. Like qigong's great. I still do it. You know what I mean? There's Kundalini yoga, which I am currently a practitioner of here myself. There is the Nidon practices, which is actually really interesting about the Nidon practices is they're not necessarily Taoist or Buddhist. They sit in like their own kind of weird little gray area. And both traditions use them for internal alchemy. Like Taoists will use the Nidon practices for internal alchemy, and Buddhists will also use the Nidon practices for internal alchemy. But as far as them being in one strict spirituality or another, they're not. They kind of sit in their own little, even, Hatha Yoga is an informed, even the Yogananda Institute's version of Kriya Yoga, a version of internal alchemy. There's many different kinds. I mean, even breath work is a version of internal alchemy. Meditation's a version of it. And through this, what we do is we have ancestral, both spiritual and physical DNA that we can tap into doing these practices, because most of the time what these practices do is they elicit a somatic response in the body. And what happens with this somatic response is you release a lot of your conditioning, you release a lot of your traumas, and a lot of these things are actually which weigh us down from these higher states of consciousness and these higher states of being. So that's why when you're somatically releasing this trauma and all of this negativity that you've experienced, you're actually clearing a path for you to get into these higher states of being and these higher states of consciousness. So that's why, guys, like honestly, the spiritual work's the most important. I'm gonna hit the nail home there. You want to get to these heightened states, but what this does is it alchemizes our subtle body. Our subtle body is a very real thing. It's your energetic body. It's where the nadis exist, your chakra system, all of this stuff. This starts to align this, and this starts to activate this. And this is actually a key integral component to unlocking this within ourselves, is to fully align our subtle body, and so basically at this point, then you tap into things like you were talking about, these abilities, these things called these cities, right? And these cities are yogic abilities. Actually, this is what freaked out the British when they got to India back in supposedly the 1700s. And this is how yoga got demonized. Was the British showed up in India and saw all of these siddhas who did these yogic traditions, who practiced this stuff and had some very interesting abilities, and it freaked them the fuck out. They were like, holy crap, dude. And this is where the whole demonization of yoga actually came into play at this point in time. Was the British went back to Britain and they were like, dude, yoga's evil, dude. These people are levitating. They're growing larger. They're growing smaller. Like this, there's something up with this stuff. So that's where the demonization came from. But you can unlock things like this. I mean, we look at the second Buddha, Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche. There's actually an image of his footprint that he put into stone at a temple in the Himalayas. He was the second Buddha. And he was a very powerful Siddha himself. So, we look at these abilities. We do have these are natural human abilities we just lost touch with. And the thing to gaining the cities is you have to understand their internal counterpart. And you have to embrace the internal counterpart before you get the external ability. So let's, for instance, take Anima, which is the city of Anima. And that's for you to shrink yourself down to the most subtlest form. Shrink yourself down to the size of an atom, to the size of the Planck lathe, whatever it may be. But at first, in order for you to activate that, you must understand humility for every single batch of life on this planet. You must exercise this humility. And once you understand that and you embody that, then the physical ability will be of availability to you. So I just wanted to say that real quick. I wanted to throw that in there because I know you had, but keep going. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you didn't cut me off. You're great. I could listen to you all day. This is it's fascinating.
Thank you.
I actually grew up next to one of the self-realization temples in Carlsbad, California. And my friend's mom used to go to these 10-hour meditations all day long. And I was like, what are you going to do there? She's like, oh, we're just going to sit in silence. And I'm like, God, that sounds terrible. Right now that I'm older, I really appreciate the discipline she had. And I can't even imagine the experiences she opened herself up to because she was willing to sit in the silence of going inside and getting quiet. And my experience and what I've learned in the last few years is if you can do that, if you can get quiet and you can go inside, you will find a whole new world. You will open up, as they say, in the Bible, to find the true kingdom of God, you have to go inside. I think these were metaphors for the chakras, which I personally believe are portals to other realms. Even I love some of the metaphors, they call it the temple of God. But what do you have on the side of your head? You have temples, right? That last talk you gave about metaphysical and you're getting into the hypothalamus and stuff. And I think that there's huge metaphors there with that they have put into some of these scriptures. And the other thing I wanted to touch base on too was you've been doing this for so long. I was wondering if you might explain to people what your favorite practice is and why, and what that has done for you.
Absolutely. So one thing I want to touch on with meditation real quick, because this is the thing that I think a lot of the teachers get wrong in this community. Meditation is not, at first, it's not silencing the mind. Okay. You will get there. But this is the thing. One of the biggest things, because I taught people meditation, I do workshops, for my business and things like that. It's I can't stop thinking during my meditation. I can't stop my mind. And I said, no, what you want to do, all right, is you want to view your thoughts with non-attachment. That's the first thing you want to do. And one of the biggest metaphors I kind of put in with that is, imagine you're sitting in the mountains somewhere in nature and you're sitting next to a stream. You see a leaf float down the stream. Do you reach up and do you go and grab that leaf? No. Do you try to divert the leaf? No. You let it pass by. And this is what you need to do with your thoughts when you first start meditating. Over time, as you get good at having non-attachment with your thoughts and watching them pass by, then you will begin to silence the mind. So that's just one thing I want to say to everybody, about that. So don't get discouraged if you're just starting meditation. Where do you want? I'll send you a link, Don, for sure. And I have an old video that's on my personal YouTube. I'll have to pull it up for you. But so that's just the one thing I wanted to say about meditation. The second thing you were saying about the divine symbolism, yes, absolutely. This is the thing is, our external experience is a mirror of our internal one. All right. And that's why whatever you work on within yourself, you understand your external experience is also going to change. And so the symbolism and the coding and the math that we see in our external experience also exists within us. I mean, you have the 33 vertebrae, the 12 olfactory nerves, you have the 144,000 nadis, the 144,000 petals on the crown chakra lotus. A lot of this, the fact that our pelvis looks like the head of Ganesh. Okay, and that Ganesh actually is the root chakra. It's in Vedic tradition. Ganesh represents the grounding, the original point of origin in Vedic mythology. So the fact that our pelvis looks like the head of Ganesh is very telling. But my favorite practice, honestly, guys, this is what I'm going to say. Throughout the years, I've experimented with many. I've done Hatha yoga, I've done Ashtanga yoga, I've done Qigong, I've done various different types of meditations. And honestly, the one that I think that is going to be here to stay is Kundalini Kriyas, for sure. The amount of healing I have done with myself in the past now 2 years that I've been doing the Kundalini Kriyas trumps anything else that I have experienced. I get natural DMT releases through this, because this is the one thing, and this is the biggest thing I want to dispel right here. When we talk about the natural psychedelic state, your endogenous psychedelic state, it doesn't take you fucking years to do. Okay. And this is the one myth that's going around in our community. Oh, it's going to take you 10 to 20 years to cultivate something like that. No, dude. If you put some elbow grease into it, you can have it in about a year. Because that's what I did. I put some elbow grease into it, man, and I got to work with it. And I was getting natural DMT releases 30 seconds to a minute long a year going into this practice. But this is the one thing, talking about the metaphysical anatomy, which is great. So how the Kundalini Kriyas work is it works through your cerebral spinal fluid. And in your cerebral spinal fluid, you actually have endogenous DMT, you have endogenous 5-MeO DMT, and you have something called anandamides, which are your endogenous cannabinoids. And they all exist in these concentrations in your cerebral spinal fluid. So in Kundalini, you've called it the Christ oil, and Kundalini yoga, we call it the sacred nectar. That's what we call it. And through the work that you do, what ends up happening is you get used to these chakra locks, because your subtle body is a real thing, guys. It's not metaphysical speculation. You can flex your chakras. And you can feel this for yourself. But what happens is that cerebral spinal fluid moves up your spinal column. Exactly, Don. Yes. And yes, Cosmic Voice, you were right. But there's a way to produce more of it. And I'm telling you how to do it right now. And it moves up your spinal column, and this cerebral spinal fluid actually dumps into your hypothalamus cavity. So you're getting this endogenous DMT, you're getting the endogenous 5-MeO DMT, you're getting the anandamides, your endogenous cannabinoids that dump in your. So you don't need an MAO high inhibitor. You don't need anything like that. This stuff is going directly into the throne of spirit in your brain. And when this happens, you're going to experience and have an experience from these endogenous compounds entering your hypothalamus cavity, the sacred nectar. That's why in Kundalini yoga, what we do is after we get it there, we sit there and we do neck rolls, and we let it roll around that cavity in our brain. And so it can get everywhere in there. And it also has the benefits. So honestly, my favorite practice is Kundalini Kriyas at this point in time. I think it's going to be here to stay. I still do Qigong, though. I love Qigong. I've practiced Qigong for going on 10 years now. I still practice Qigong. I do the excuse me, the brocades. I do the brocades, the elemental, and the animals. Before I use it as a warm up. The animal sequences, the dragon sequence, the lion sequence, things like that. I use that to warm up for boxing, because it lets my life force energy actually kind of like ramp up, and I do notice a difference when I do it. But as far as like the most bang for your buck, I'm going to have to say Kundalini yoga, Kundalini Kriyas, guys. And there's a reason why they say it's taboo, because it actually works. And I guarantee you, if we had a lot of people start picking up Kundalini yoga, the mental health care system and the physical health care system that we know as of today would cease to fucking be. It would be gone, because we would have a whole bunch of people healing themselves.
Man, I so agree with that. I was in telecommunications for like 10 years. I used to do provisioning and coding on circuits. I left that and I went into working with nonprofits. Specifically, I started working at Blood Institute. And this particular one I worked at, they actually invented the technology and the machine that now can determine if you have HIV or not. And for some that have heard this story before, it blew my mind, Stephen, the night that I found out that. So we would get donations either through blood mobiles or through people coming into the center. And my job as the office coordinator and the inventory control manager was to predict how many warm blood units we could get on a plane to Florida within 8 hours of it being drawn, because we got a lot more money for it. And I kid you not, they called these things Buffies, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yes. And I never got over it. Like, I was like, what the hell is, and this is before I ever saw a UFO documentary. I was really asleep. I'll tell you, when I saw Unacknowledged, which was Stephen Greer's documentary, that was the first one that I saw. I drove around for 2 weeks in a company car looking at the sky going, oh my gosh, I really believe there was no life on the outside of Earth. I just felt like so dumb. But I'll tell you, after that, I had no problem believing. Like, I definitely have like a Peter Pan syndrome. I totally agreed with what you said earlier about the construct we're in. I think that we can completely pull from the sphere of availability into the third dimensional material with our thoughts. And that to me is actually very exciting, because I think that we can jump timelines with it. I think we can pull things in and change the circumstances that we're under. It made something even more clear to me, though, and that's why they're trying to be the powers that be, or the powers that don't be, the nefarious ones with the low energy. I think that's why they have to be so manipulative and they do their trickery, is because we are incredibly powerful and we come from a very divine force. And I do believe that we have come here by choice at this time for the specific purpose to wake people up, to help them remember. I don't think that those that are on the losing side ever meant to win this war. I think it was all about trying to take divine, source or fractal source energy and try to pull that in. So I'm very excited about the future because of, the opportunities that we have to really bring forward what they say has been make believe, or, when we're kids, oh, that child has such a wild imagination. Well, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with flying. It consumed me, whether I was awake or I was asleep. I was dreaming about flying. And I had severe depression when I was like 11 because I kept being told, oh, that's not real. You can't move things with your mind. You can't levitate. You can't shrink your size. I found out over the last few years, it is completely real. And those that are in these, secret societies or not so secret societies, they totally believe in it and they're practicing it. And so
Absolutely.
I'm glad to be having conversations, especially with people like you. You've done the legwork. You've put the time in. I think there's a lot that you have that could be very valuable for people if they're willing to listen. And before we still have some time, but before we say goodbye today, I would like it if you would share with us about your workshops and stuff, because I am totally down to take one of those for sure.
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing. I actually saw a really good comment from Cosmic Voice 33. And so one of the biggest reasons how this reality is so manufactured, let's kind of start there. And I'm going to get to what Cosmic Voice was saying. And Don said a great comment too, 100%. It doesn't matter what we want. What we feed our minds is what we create. And that's exactly what I'm going to get to. So one of the biggest things in this community I want to dispel. All right. And this is what I'm going to say. Yes, the conspiracies are true, but that's not the point. And this might be kind of a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, but what all of the conspiracies are showing you, and you're not supposed to stay there. There's some people who stay there, don't get me wrong. And, you shouldn't. The conspiracy frequency is somewhere you take a visit to. You don't build a house there. You don't shack up there, because all of these conspiracies are showing you that there is a spiritual nature to this reality. I mean, why would every conspiracy have ties with the esoteric and the occult if that wasn't the case? Every single one has ties with esotericism and the occult. So that's what I'm going to say. But also, too, this is how they manufacture a reality. And Don and I have talked about this before, too. They get us to manifest it for them. is what they do, because these lower density entities, these lower density humans and these lower vibrational humans, they don't have that ability. So what they do, so I use something called the Truman Show analogy. But instead of being advertised products, I mean, which we are advertised products, but what we're also advertised is narratives, ideologies, and trains of thought. And whatever narrative, ideology, or train of thought that you buy into ultimately becomes your reality, your subjective reality. And if enough of the collective buys into this narrative, ideology, or train of thought, it will manifest into the collective reality. And this is why they tried to keep everybody in a state of mesmerized terror. You know, I borrow that from that Black Mirror episode, Joan is Awful. It's one of the only mainstream TV shows that I recommend you watch, because there's a lot of truth in there when it comes to quantum computing and simulations that they run. But they keep people in a state of mesmerized terror, because this is where the whole loosh harvesting thing comes into play too. There's actually another ancient name for loosh. It's called dukkha. And this is what the Buddhists actually refer to this energy as. It's called dukkha. And we emit this dukkha when we're in heightened states of emotion, especially negative emotion. And we also emit this energy if we have an untrained mind. Look at the general population. They're always in a state of mesmerized terror, and they don't have a trained mind. So it's a loosh farm. It definitely is. I mean, when you really think about it that way, it's a loosh farm for everybody. But and this is the thing, you know, when we buy into these disaster scenarios, we buy into these doomsday scenarios. Now, here's the one thing I'm saying. I'm not being blissfully ignorant. I understand we're going to have accelerations, but this is the thing I'm trying to tell you, is you have more power than you think you do. All of us on a subjective level are insanely powerful to our own right. And even when we start moving into small groups, into small collective groups, that amplifies our power. And we do more here than you realize when it comes to offsetting a lot of the things that happen. I mean, I saw the thing about there's a couple of things. I mean, there's people who think that we're going to get this solar flash. There's people who think we're going to have a pole shift. In my opinion, I think we've moved past that timeline. I think the work and the awareness that we've been doing here has enabled us to hop through these timelines and to jump into these different better outcomes because of the work that we're doing. And you know, the fact that we're doing podcasts like this, we're having conversations like this, you know, that we're meeting each other, we're getting together, we're sharing these ideas. This is actually putting forth into the human collective consciousness so much energy. It is offsetting and it's shifting a lot of what they're trying to achieve. So that's the one thing I want to say. Don't ever doubt the power you have, guys. Stand in that fucking power. Okay. And use it responsibly, and understand that you are creating your own reality and you're assisting in the co-creation of this reality. So the content you intake, the things you fill your eyes with, the things you fill your ears with are going to be like of the utmost importance when it comes to how you develop and how you progress. So, and I do want to talk on Cosmic Voices comment here, who really runs the show. And you would be right. There are extra dimensional entities that do have a hand here, but this is the big thing. The families that are talking about in the mainstream circle, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, all of those guys, those are the lowest level, y'all. If you want to talk about the real families, start looking up the Pacers. Start looking up the Orsinis. Start looking up these people. And the one thing you're going to find is you can find a little bit on the Pacers, but you're not going to find much on the Orsinis. And you're going to find little bits here and there. But the Pacers, they actually they have a bunch of shell companies that do genetic research, that do a whole bunch of other things as well. And so that's what I'm talking. And apparently this top fucking Jason. God, dude. We got to do a show together sometime, man. You've convinced me after this. We're going to do a show.
I've been begging Jason to come on. I told him he could talk about anything he wants if he'll just come on, please. So now you've got two open invites, Jason.
But apparently, so there's word going around that one of these top families have actually accessed a type of ancient technology that they shouldn't have. And what this ancient technology does is it uses frequencies. It sings reality into being. Agreed, cosmic voice. I'm just throwing this out there. Yeah, no, agreed. They aren't fully human indeed. And this technology they have, whether it's Atlantean, whether it's Tartarian, I'm not sure. Don, I'm down.
Cosmic gas.
Don, I'm down. I would love to do that with Jason. That would be
God.
freaking. That would be awesome.
Bring my popcorn.
Yes, bring your popcorn for that one, guys.
I'll be there in the front row to watch.
I don't do shows high very often, but if you want to see it happen, then that'll be the day. But they have this technology that sings reality into existence, and what it does is it bombards us with junk frequencies. And I really think that these junk frequencies have a really big deal when it comes to a lot of what's going on here, as far as the manipulation of people, the hypnosis that they're undergoing. Because back in 2016, I would say cognitive dissonance. I wouldn't even say hypnosis. I would say but now we're in the year 2025, and I'm not going to lie, dude. There's some straight up hypnosis going on. Absolutely. The fact that people are still saying they trust the government after being gaslit about the Epstein papers, being gaslit about the Kennedy papers, and to me, it's like, so we're dealing with a full on hypnosis at this point. And, the only way to break that hypnosis, guys, is going within, is to becoming a being with personal sovereignty, personal agency, having discernment, living in a foundation of the divine, living in alignment with your spiritual values. Okay. And this is the only way to break yourself out of this hypnosis. And I mean, it is, man. I see people in this community still even get roped into it, man. I can't tell you how many people, election 2024, people just all hopping on the Trump bandwagon, man. And this is the thing. This is the thing, guys. We're dealing with what I would call mental, psychological, and spiritual warfare. Every election season, they're going to send out a fresh new face that's going to dangle a carrot in front of you. I mean, look at Vivek Ramaswamy, for fuck's sake. When he first started showing up, he didn't get the bill. But look at him. He's like, I'm going to expose the truth about 9/11. I'm gonna blow all the conspiracies out of the water. I'm going to do this. And everybody just fucking falls for it, dude. Everybody, it's like, dude, I've seen this over the course of almost 18 years now. They do this every time. They did it with fucking Bernie Sanders back in 2012. Yes. Or was it back in 2016? They did it with Bernie Sanders too. They send out this new fresh fucking face that's going to cater to your ideology and your narrative just to get you roped back into this system. And then once they get elected, they retract back and all of their promises disappear. I mean, guys, we have got to start noticing this cycle, and we need to stop falling for it. Like, this is the number one thing I'm going to say. I don't care. I guarantee you in the election of 2028, they're going to send out somebody. He could be just like me. He could be just like Michelle, or she could be just like Michelle. He could be just like Don. And he's going to be like, yeah, I'm going to show that there is a spiritual nature to this reality, or, I'm going to do this and this and this. And dude, I just see it. I see it all over the community. People continuously get roped back in, man. And the number one thing I'm going to say about this, because, I don't really talk politics too much anymore. To me, it's just a world stage. But this is what I'm going to say. Both wings of this bird are not for you, and they never will be. Okay? And stop falling. Stop falling for the charades. Stop falling for the illusions. Stop falling for them plucking on your fucking mind strings, being like, oh, I'm going to release the Kennedy papers. I'm going to release the Epstein files. And people just fall for it, dude. Even people in our community. And it's actually a big frustration of mine because I've watched this since 2008. You know what I mean? I continuously see this. As I can't tell you, back in 2012 when Obama was getting fucking reelected, all of the people in the spiritual community at that time were all like, oh, he needs this. And I'm like, I'm looking at these people because here's the thing. Like, right, I woke up in 2008. I'm not going to lie. I voted for Obama then because at that point I was really young. And then I saw he turned out just like the rest of them. And then again, I saw the next guy turn out just like the rest of them. And the next guy turn out just like the rest of them. And the next guy. And then I realized, I'm like, we're being gaslit with elections. We're being gaslit with thinking we have some kind of choice. We're being gaslit with thinking this is ever going to fucking get better. It's not. So that's the one thing I do want to say, and I'll hand it back to you, is wise the fuck up, everybody. Doesn't matter what kind of carrot they're going to dangle in front of you. The system is not for you, and you need to get that through your head.
So BG Cast for president.
Dude, you know, I was, believe it or not, I was going to, and you're on YouTube, so I'll keep it fresh. You know, I'll make sure I don't say too much. I was going to run for Lakewood City Council in 2027 for the American Capitalist Party. But here's the thing: when you get into politics, number one, you have to really dim down and stifle your authenticity, and
Yeah.
that's not something I'm really about in life. You know, and then two, you have to really, really be up the butt of this really small country in the Eastern Mediterranean. You have to really, you have to metaphorically smoke their pole, or you're not. And I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that because even though the people of that country I have no issue with, the government of that country I have a very huge issue with, and the fact that they also grant pedophiles asylum in that country as well should be a red flag on why you should not support it. But I'm going to leave it at that. But yeah, no, thanks for the presidential bid, but I don't think it's up my alley in this lifetime, at least.
Man, where's my peanut gallery box at? I gotta get my soapbox out. There's so much you said. Yes. I come from a whole family of people that fought in wars. I have an uncle that suffered with Agent Orange and he committed suicide. Aaron, my other half, he's a Purple Heart veteran. He pretty much told me that going to Afghanistan was all about heroin poppies, putting in a central bank, and maybe harvesting some Candlelight DNA. He said there was no reason for them to be over there. These people are incredibly poor. They are dealing with horrible living situations. It took us 10 years to get his interpreter here, who him, his wife, and their 5 children were on the run for a decade from the Taliban. And what do? When we pulled out, we left behind literal proprietary information with retina scans and pretty much a map with an X on how to find everybody that they considered to be a traitor that gave information or intel to American soldiers while we were there. And what do we find out in all of this? Well, there's no weapons of mass destruction. Why not? Because we made up the whole thing to begin with. We trained Osama bin Laden. That guy's had special training. The only plane that flew out here on the day of 9/11 were the bin Ladens. We couldn't find this guy hiding in the mountains with a goat for 10 years. I mean, it blew my mind, you know?
Well, I saw a video that put it together quite well. You're talking about a dying man on dialysis in this cave that somehow hijacked the most highly protected airspace on the planet. And then these Boeing 757s were allowed to fly wildly off course for an hour without even being greeted by a fighter interceptor. You're telling me that a plane of 120 people succumbed to 5 people with box cutters? Are you fucking kidding me? I don't give a shit at that point. You're trying to hold up the plane with a box cutter. I'm coming at you with everything I fucking got. I'm coming at you with everything that I've got, and I'm going to take you down. And that's the thing too. And then also too, look, and here's the other thing. The biggest thing about that is I've built high-rise buildings. I'm an electrician. I've been an electrician for almost going on 16 years at this point. I've seen high-rise buildings from shell to completion. And you are not telling me exactly. You are not telling me these, dude, we're talking about 22-inch galvanized steel I-beams that are meant to withstand. Okay. So like, as somebody who's in the infrastructure sector, who has built infrastructure in this country, who has worked on it, I'm going to tell you this, dude, that whole theory is a crock of shit. And then what flew over everybody's heads in 2016 was the fact that they released these censored 28 pages. They uncensored them, and it said Saudi Arabia, our ally, was fucking behind. Yes, exactly. Demolition. Our Saudi Arabia, our ally. We know there's more to it. We know that small country in the Eastern Mediterranean also had a hand in it as well. But you know, but this is what I'm saying. Like, you know, like the fact that and that's why they went to Afghanistan, because they were getting ready to kick out the petrodollar. That's why they went over there to instill a central bank. And that's what happened to Gaddafi too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Gaddafi is a good person at all, but Gaddafi was moving away from the fucking petrodollar.
That's
And
right.
he was moving towards a gold-backed currency.
Yep.
And that's why they went in and overthrew him. Anytime you try to get rid of the dollar in the oil business, the US comes after you. Because that's ultimately where, and that's the thing too, our currency has no physical backing. It's not gold backed, it's not silver backed. The petrodollar is a little bit different than our standard dollar, but at the same time, this is what backs our currency at this time. Also, the belief that it's worth something, but this is what I'm saying. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I actually have heard a concept that my friend Renetta Jones, before she passed away in April, that she started introducing to us. She had written, I mean, these are amazing videos and they're still out there, you guys, on her channel. It was Black Sunrise University, but she had built these like micro economy plans for like a veteran society, right? Like it's just an example of one. And she was talking about how like you attach the currency to your effort, to what you're doing. And the reason she said that is because the only kind of real value that's behind this is our actual energy. That's like an actual energy harvesting that they have connected with it. And that goes all the way to like the cryptocurrency. And I'm not saying I understand this completely, but I'm smart enough and I was able to piece it together enough that I could say, yeah, I could totally see that. And it is all about our belief because, like I was sitting here thinking one day thinking about it and I was like, dude, if we all just sat at home and we're like, screw making a car payment. I'm not paying an electric bill. I'm not, I don't personally, I don't vote anymore because I think it's just an illusion. This is my own personal thing. I don't judge anybody else who does. I have voted in the past. But I just think it's such a dog and pony show. And it's just one more thing to divide us and cause people to get into arguments over, which is what they want us doing while they're continuing their, totalitarian tiptoe, as David Icke calls it, right? They want us all over here distracted. And these motherfuckers are over here doing teamwork. Like, I'm not down with living like that anymore. And so I also want to agree with you, like the conversations we're having, I feel like this is like a time capsule for people who come along in the future. Absolutely. Yeah. Like it plants a seed. My frustration personally has been, I guess my dad says he has this problem too, because I just know too much sometimes, Michelle. I don't know when to shut up. And I'm like, I think I know when. I have that problem too, right? Like I get so excited when I connect with people and I've just read so much that I just start, acting like not like a know-it-all, but I just want to share. And I've had to really learn how to sit back and just shut the hell up, quite frankly, and listen a little bit more.
I totally get it. I mean, honestly, this is honestly, if this is the thing, they want you to think overthrowing this government would be a very hard thing, but actually it would be quite easy if we had enough people on board. And one of the biggest, so there's two instances we could do to overthrow this system, and they're actually very well planned out. If 51% of the country, 51, because then we're at majority at that point, if 51% of the country stopped doing anything for 3 days, that means no driving, no using the internet, no buying any goods, no anything. And so that would immediately cause stocks to start tanking. That would immediately put the ball back in our court. The other thing too is using reverse propaganda on the working class. Using reverse propaganda on the blue collar people. Let me tell you what, dude, that would overthrow this thing. I'm with you, Cosmic Voice. These are two things I've thought about in my journey. So I'm just laying them out for Michelle on the show. And if you used reverse propaganda on the working class and the working class decided to stop working because they're not being treated fairly, there goes any more infrastructure, there goes any more commerce, there goes any of that stuff. And then again, the ball would be thrown into our court. Ultimately, the biggest thing that would turn the tides around at this point in time, and a lot of people say this is la la land fantasy, but you could see why they always pit us against each other. If we all learned how to put our petty minute differences aside just temporarily, and work together to overcome this current situation, we would literally cast mountains into the sea. as Christ says.
Exactly.
We would literally cast mountains into the sea. But that's the thing though, is that's why they divide us. That's why, and it's funny because this is why you have more power than you think, and I want to touch on this. So back at the beginning of season 3, I had a show called Common Ground, and I actually got somebody from the left and somebody from the right to sit down in the same room together and have a civil conversation. And it was actually quite productive, because one of the things we learned is a lot of these topics the media tries to divide us over aren't as black and white as they're portrayed. And actually, both sides actually feel very similar about these very certain key issues and these very key points. When it comes to a lot of these issues, and we dissected it. We dissected the whole division dichotomy. And I kid you not, 2 days later, Trump put forth that ban on recognizing LGBTQ Pride Month, Black History Month, women, like 2 days later. And I'm not trying to toot my horn and say I'm that fucking big and bad. Trump did that because of me. But in my eyes, it seems very oddly coincidental that 2 days after I aired this show, Destroying the Division Dichotomy, they ramp up the division. They're like, oh no, he figured it out. We need to get them pissed off again. So that's basically what it was. And that show was heavily shadow banned, dude. I kid you not. I had to repost it like a total of 10 times. It kept like disappearing, or the post wouldn't post, or things like that. I had to literally like tag followers, highlight, and everything to get people to come. It ended up having a good turnout overall, but they did their damnedest to try and hide that, because honestly, that is the weakest point in this wall. A lot of people see what's going on as this gigantic wall that's in front of them right now. And it spans dimensions, and it spans time and space. But the weakest point is us. We're the ones holding the wall up. And the minute we decide to stop holding the wall up, it's fucking endgame for them. And I just wanted to throw that out there real quick.
No, it's true. It's so true. I've seen it, and I've had it happen in my own family. Aaron, one of Aaron's kids is transgendered now, and I have nothing against gay people or I love everybody. Okay. I grew up in California. It's a big melting pot. Everything's a go there. I had to move here to Alabama to see people be more judgmental than anything. But I know that what happened to his son being turned into his daughter is everything to do with what happened with the school system in Oklahoma. And I'll give you a perfect example of it. They cut so much funding for teachers and like firefighters. They went to 4-day-a-week school weeks. They got rid of all the extracurricular activities. And my first thought, right, was, what is that going to do to the teenage pregnancy rate? They did this in communities where these are usually single parents working 2 jobs to barely make ends meet. They target people. You can look at the crack epidemic. You can look at what they did with flooding that into boroughs in New York City. It goes on and on, right? The worst traffickers of children and drugs is our CIA. I'm just going to say it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They do this shit on purpose. And then they want to sit there and throw stones at people like they don't live in a glass house, right? Like, I don't know. I can't take the hypocrite stuff. And I start with myself. Like I just put my stuff on the world stage, because if I say it about myself, then they can't say anything about me. But like, I have a big mouth, and that's why I'm having these talks, is because I want people to know you're thinking it, you've seen things, something doesn't sit right with you. It shouldn't be like this. And we can change it all.
Oh, absolutely, man. And that's the thing too. And I want to address Cosmic Voice again. He said, like, you seem like a good dude and genuine, which in this community, well, here's the thing, man. And I'll tell you why I'm this way, because I've seen it. I've seen what you're talking about. You know what I mean? I've seen it, and that disillusionment. I have a story. I remember. So back when I was 25, I started working at this holistic center on the East Coast, and it was called Rising Phoenix. It's in Manassas, Virginia. It's still around, just different owner, thank God, because of the old owner. This is what the story's about. Go check it out and support it. But I was teaching occult studies and sacred geometry at this holistic center, and she was all about the money. She was teaching these women. I walked in getting ready. She's teaching these women how to manifest BMWs and material items into their life. And I'm like sitting there like listening to this. I'm like, isn't this the opposite of what we should be telling people to do? Like, I mean, we want to manifest spiritual sustenance. Yes, we want a comfortable stay and in this temporary human experience, but focusing solely on material goods, we see where that ends us. And I remember we ended up getting like into a big thing. She ended up letting me go because I said the word revolution in one of my classes, and she goes, revolution's got a violent frequency to it. And I'm like, no, it doesn't, man. I was talking about a spiritual revolution.
Jesus.
But let me tell you, let me tell you something. And this is, I'm going to tell you guys this. There's in my 18 years of looking this over, the people who have their head, heart, and hands truly 200% all in this are very few and far between. If they are big and they have a huge platform, they were placed there. And they were placed there. I mean, I hate to knack on Billy Carson. I hate to knack on all these people because yes, they did have a big contribution to my awakening. But if they have millions of followers and they're talking about the stuff that we are, they were placed there. They were put in that position. And so I try to do it right, man, because that's the thing, Cosmic Voice, is even though I've been on this evolution for 18 years, I still don't have it all figured out, man. There's new layers of this experience that reveal themselves to me on a daily basis. You know what I mean? So who am I to tell you just because I've been awake for 18 years, I fucking know everything? I absolutely don't. I'm learning just like the rest of you guys. Like I might have had my feet in the water a little bit more, but I'm still just learning just like the rest of you guys, and that's the way I deliver this because I want people to feel welcome when they come to my show. I want people to feel included when they come to my show, and I want people to learn. I don't want to, and it makes me sick, man, because I had to out this fake ascended master. I'm not going to name her name because that's not who I am, but I had to out her because she was being cruel and calling the people who were following her like low frequency humans. You just don't understand. Like, dude, like when I see that kind of stuff, man, it makes me sick because like I see us all as an awakened family. And like, don't get me wrong. I know with each family, we have dysfunctional family members. And I'm not saying that everybody in our community is doing the work the way they should be. But, I see us all as an awakened family, man. We're all in this together. Yes, it's been a lifetime of this for you. You're 50 and you have more questions than answers. Dude, I'm in the same boat as you and I'm 37, man. So I constantly have more questions every day. And that's where I come from, man. And that's how I try, and that's how I roll. I don't, it's not about ego for me. This is from my heart. This is passion. This is the message I want to deliver in the way that I see fit. And that's where I come from, man.
I love that. I so agree with you. Aaron says I have my heart on my sleeve all the time. Like I am one of those too. Like if like I see someone getting picked on or I see somebody who is being singled out and they're already having a hard time, like I'm more likely to go stand next to that person and try to help them get out of that hole than I'm going to sit there with everybody else, spectating. Like I grew up around those people that drive the BMWs. They're all in San Diego. That's why I had to leave there. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. It was ridiculous. And the 1 year that I spent out of, I guess Guam's a U.S. territory, so it's not out of the country, but I'll tell you, the best time I had and where I became and found myself was on that island when I was 19. And it's third world. I saw people who do not have running water. They were, they didn't know where their next meal was coming from. But I'll tell you that, like, not only were those the kindest people I've ever met, give me anything I needed, they were my real friends. And when I came home, and I went from a tropical island to upstate New York in the wintertime. So evidently I don't own a map. And I was in upstate New York and I realized like, man, this keeping up with the Joneses, like everybody here was in such a hurry. Like I had so much anxiety when I came back because I realized how materialistic everybody is. Just this whole rat race of like the two kids and the golden retriever and the minivan and the house and the like. Mm-hmm. I can't even say it without getting like anxiety because I was like, dude, that is not who I am. I am so unmotivated by money. It's ridiculous. I'm not into the material. To me, my treasures are my friends. Like I always say, I'll take a cave full of friends over a cave full of gold. Like
Absolutely.
I think as long as you have good people with a good heart and you are focused, you can bring anything in. And I think that, it may be that some people feel overwhelmed. And I'm not going to lie, like, I think we have a lot of work to do. We have our work cut out for us, but I feel very confident. I think that love is always going to conquer over the darkness. Like, and that's the beautiful thing. Like, the example I give is, how many more muscles does it take to frown than it does to smile, right? Just one person being in the state of love and sending that energy out, it will pick up around them, and it will affect way more people than it is a bad mood's going to be able to carry, right?
Absolutely.
I want to kind of shift the conversation for a little bit, since I know we don't have too much time left.
Yeah, wherever you want to go.
I wanted to, I want to get into the eyeball, because I've been dying to talk about this, right?
Yeah, let's chat about it for a sec. Yeah.
So I guess let me give everybody the backstory here. So Stephen and I are new friends, and we talk a little bit every day. And then my friend Kelly, who you guys know, Cosmic Voice, I know definitely knows her, really good friend of mine. And Kelly on her channel has a story about her awakening. And none of this was on the radar for her. Basically what happened was she was sitting on her front porch. It's summertime, it's August. She's listening to this band we both like called Lion of Judah. And it's during that time where they call it like Lionsgate. And she literally gets pulled out of her body, and she ends up in this like cathedral of stained glass. Earlier you were describing like being hit with that energy. She described it like being punched in the face by source light is what she said it was like for her. And essentially what she was going through was this experience where she was walking next to this like giant being, and on the other side of it was a little boy. Now she thinks this little boy is her higher self. And her and I both think we might have been guys in a past life, just because of like our demeanor. Like we're both kind of tomboyish. So, we've had this talk privately, but in the middle of this experience, she says two things. One, she thinks that this cathedral could potentially be the entrance and exit out of this matrix or this fake construct, right? The other thing too, she says, is that she looks over and there's this giant. Now, for those who've seen Lord of the Rings, they call it the Eye of Sauron, which is in the tower. I think Billy Carson calls it the all-seeing eye of Enlil. The Gnostics called it the demiurge, right? It's like many, many names. Okay, it's basically a big freaking red eyeball. Now, my connection is this. I have been looking into heraldry for months now, and there's a repetitive theme, right? And I keep seeing a blue and a red eyeball in everything. And this goes all the way to the mission launch patches, the space launch patches with SpaceX and NRO and NASA, and all it goes on and on, right? And so I'm messaging Stephen while Kelly's telling me this freaking story, and he goes, I know what you're talking about. I've seen this thing in the astral. I've been battling it. And I mean, I wish there could have been a camera in my kitchen when that happened, because my jaw was on the floor. Like the synchronicities of all of this, and even the chances I was talking to you and her at the same time, like I know this was something that happened on purpose. And so that's what I kind of want to get into, is how you've told us a lot about these really great experiences, but I know we didn't all come here just to be happy and go lucky. We're here as warriors, right? Like to be a warrior of light. And so I want to maybe to explain a little bit about what those experiences have been like and how that started for you. And we'll just take it from there.
I've had the demiurge, Yaldabaoth. I joke that one day we're gonna have a thumb wrestling match, and I'm gonna win because he has no thumbs. But no, he's the way he's portrayed himself to me in my experiences is a lion with the body of a snake. Very, very, very particular to the Gnostic depiction of him. That's kind of where I understand it from. So that's maybe why it manifests in that sense. So I know who it is. Oh yeah, him and I have thrown each other around the astral quite a few times. And the one thing about him is that we have to ultimately understand is that in a very strange way, he is also a part of us. And part of, like I said, our external experience is a mirror of our internal one. So most of the experiences I've had with him, it's very nasty. He's got a very nasty energy. It's almost like the energy of a scorned child. That's kind of the very emotionally angry, scorned child is the energy that I get. Cheers, man, for sure. And he because he is basically the offspring of Sophia, which is the feminine aspect of the divine. And Sophia had him without the divine on her own, and that's why he ended up the way he did. So that's where that energy really comes from. It's almost like a very emotionally, insanely enraged, scorned child is what you're dealing with. And that's, and of course, like we've fought, and there would be times like, it'll go like, there's no point in fighting me. The real way to beat me. And but still it wants to come and it wants to get into my space, especially when I'm in the astral or the dream world. So that's essentially the experiences I've had with him. It's shown itself to me in the real reality, though, through symbolism and certain things as well, that it has been present in my energetic sphere. Really, the worst experiences I've had were with these insectoids, the mantis-looking beings, and the reptilians. And one of the ones, I had a dream. This was actually a few months back. I was in this jail, almost like it looked like a normal jail, and there were these guards around me, these prison guards. Now, a little bit about me: when I was younger and I was messing up, I did some time. I'm out of that now. I'm not that person anymore. We're talking now 17 plus years ago, 18 plus years ago, this all happened. But, so if I'm in a jail, especially in a dream state, it's definitely an alarming thing for me, and it makes me lucid immediately. And I remember these guards are sitting there going, and they're looking at me with this very stern look, and they're like, "You have to come with us." And I'm like, "Listen, I'm not going anywhere until you tell me why I need to come with you and what I'm exactly being arrested for." And they just kept not saying anything. They just kept repeating themselves. And then I remember one of them tried to grab me, and I grabbed him by the neck and I shoved him through the drywall. And as soon as I did this, he got this very menacing grin on his face, and his face morphed to this mantis being. And then the prison, the normal real world prison I was in, kind of got obliterated away, and I was in this tesseract prison in this different dimension, and all of these guards became this mantis beings, and I was like, holy shit. I was like, I need to get out of here now. And I remember I'm like sitting there thinking, and they're all just looking at me like kind of snickering and laughing. And then I remember like I kind of looked in between. Yes, they were not golden and white. They had like a very greenish bluish overlay to them. So it wasn't those. And that's the one thing I've noticed is these beings and these entities have different factions.
Yeah.
There could be good ones, there could be ones that are not. But I remember as I'm like looking around, I'm trying to think to myself as they're all starting to surround me, I see the hole that leads to my bed, like it's on the back side of the prison. And I was like, I have to get there. So I remember I ran towards them. And of course, you're in the astral. You can do things you can't normally do. I remember I like went sideways. I slid between them, the crack like in their legs. And I like slid at this super quick speed into this portal back to my bedroom. And freaking like, I remember I woke up and I was like, dude, I have a feeling if I didn't get out of there, I was going to be stuck there. Like that was just the feeling that I had over me. Like they were trying to capture me. They did not want me to leave. And I ended up getting out because I remember I did this weird matrix maneuver and like slid in between them and ended up getting like out the portal into my bedroom. And yeah, that was one of the craziest ones. And also I got jumped by the reptilians during a mushroom experience. So like this was back in, it was Thanksgiving 2023. And I remember I started getting really into my Kundalini yoga, and I was kind of abstained off. And I abstained off psychedelics for 2 years while I like really perfected the endogenous psychedelic state. And I remember it was like my last dose. I was going to do a heroic dose. I was going to do 4 grams. So this last dose I was going to do for a while because I'm like, I'm really going to dive into the Kundalini yoga. I want to access my natural DMT. So I have to bring this cup over here to show you what happened. But so I'm sitting. No, I'll show you. So I'm sitting at my dinner table, and I feel like the effects starting to come on, and something just feels really off. And I'm like, well, I guess we're in for a difficult experience. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go get a drink and I'm going to chill. So I grabbed some water, and I kid you not, Michelle, as I'm drinking the water, 4 grams of mushrooms, my friend, not 4 grams of DMT. I wouldn't have even
for that.
Yeah. I wouldn't have even said. dude, I black out after 50 on DMT, 50 milligrams.
God.
So I'm sitting there and I go to take this water, and I kid you not, Michelle, something went like this. Hit the glass into my face. Water went everywhere. And I remember I'm sitting at my table and I'm like, whoa, what was that? And then I look up and they manifest into my energetic sphere, these hyperfractaline reptiles. And I'm just like, holy crap. I'm like, this was not what I was expecting. So I'm like sitting there trying to figure out what to do. And they're all coming up and they're like poking me and they're laughing. They're going, ha, 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 ha. And so I ate them cosmic voice. And I remember I'm like, all right, I said, I'm going to go up to the shower and I'm going to do the protection mantra because I needed to get water to clean them off of me. And I'm going to start saying the protection mantra. So I get into the shower and I turn the shower on. I kid you not, I start to say the protection mantra. All 7 of them wrapped their hands around my throat chakra. And it got to the point where it's like, I couldn't even say anything. Like I couldn't even talk. And I remember I bursted out of the bathroom and they're still following me. And I was like, all right, no, we're going to have to go to plan B. I said, we're going to have to go to plan B. This isn't working. So I remember I went into my bedroom, I laid on my bed and I immersed myself in the experience. And I looked down at my subtle body and I saw them feeding off of my subtle body. And I was like, holy shit. So I remember I used my energy and I pushed them off of me. And when I did this, I could see the streak of my energy that went with them that they were eating. And I remember I shoved them into the corner of my bedroom and they looked shocked after I did that. They were all like, oh my God. And I remember I sat there and I walked up to my bedroom door and I turned around and looked at them. I said, I'm going to deal with you motherfuckers later. And I fucking locked them into my bedroom and they ended up going away. But I remember I sat there and I was like, oh dude, I just got jumped. That was the first thought that came to my mind is I just got jumped interdimensionally. And so yeah, no, I've had some nasty negative experiences with entities. They're not, and that's why you have to have discernment, guys. You have to, don't just open yourself up to any entity. Don't open yourself up to so do you think those reptilians could have been a thought form rather than the ones were? It's very possible, man. It is very possible. They could have been this is the other thing though. I've noticed, although there's physical ones, there are also ones that are not. They can choose to become physical if they want to. There are physical ones that inhabit this plane, but most of the ones that I've dealt with, they're the ones that inhabit the bodies of other people. They walk around posing like human beings, but they're not. So these are the ones I've dealt with. But yeah, no, there's definitely darkness here. I'm not gonna lie. There's definitely darkness here. But the biggest thing about that, I'm going to tell you, is understand that if you conquer the darkness within yourself, you're going to conquer that darkness on the exterior of you too. And you're going to overcome that. So my biggest advice I could tell you guys is, if you're looking to have communication with entities, have discernment. Don't just let anything into your sphere. Remember, if they love bomb you, they stroke your ego, they tell you you're special, that you need to worship them or that you need to listen to them, don't give them your time or your energy. It's the ones that are going to be real and upfront with you or the ones that you're going to want to actually interact with and actually get information from. And, that's what made me trust the ones I work with is because, like I said, when they come into my energetic sphere, first thing they do is tell me about everything I'm fucking up on and how I need to fix that. Okay. It's brutal honesty, so that's why I trust them. And that's why they have earned my trust through that. But as far as the demiurge and all of these things, yes, it's a very real thing. There is I think Connor, if he's still in the audience, he called it the anti-god on the show you had with him and Jay. It's, there's many different terms for him, but it is the false god. It is it's not the true divine consciousness. And you are a subjective focal point. And that's one thing I actually love about David Icke is he lays it out very well. You are a subjective focal point of the divine consciousness. You are everything that was, is, or ever will be. And that is where you can find the true divine. within yourself. Anything that's on the exterior, anything of the material realm of the physical world, is of societal Maya. The only thing that is of the divine in this world truly are us and the Maya of nature. The Maya of nature is very divine in and of itself. There's a lot we can learn from the Maya of nature. It is our original home. If we go, we're meant to be one with it. So like that's what I would say. But no, absolutely, there's some dark shit, man, and it does come, and that's why we do have to be spiritual warriors. And our greatest weapons, man, are that personal agency and sovereignty, that discernment, building that bridge with the divine within yourself. That's going to be the greatest tool, the greatest weapon that you can use at this point in time. Sharpen your sword every day. And that's what I'm going to say about that.
Yeah. Well, I just have to say, my dad, he actually spent 8 years of not quite my young childhood. He went to prison when I was like about 11, and he didn't come home till I was pretty much graduating. And the whole time that he was in prison, he was doing banishing and bindings. And I didn't know this until a few years ago. He gave me this book. So this is the thing. My parents, now my mom's side of the family, they are devout Catholic. Okay. And nuns and wine. That's my grandmother, right? My dad's side of the family, I'll tell you, my mom and dad did not instill any religion or really a belief system in my brother and I. Now, I was baptized as a baby Catholic, but I don't ever remember going to church. They instilled more of a moral compass, and they allowed my brother and I to have the freedom of pursuing belief. They didn't give us like a religion, and I'm not judging anybody. I think as parents, you have a responsibility to instill a moral, ethical compass in your children and give them some groundings and some bearings and some morals, right, to guide themselves with. Just my opinion. I don't have any children. Mine are dogs. So that's where I'm at. But
I have dog children too. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think though that I personally have made mistakes in my life. I'm a recovering heroin addict. I'm 4 years clean. I've had my dark night of the soul. So there's certainly no judgment that's coming from this channel. I like to think that this is where everybody can come, where a good time's going to be happen, because there isn't any judgment here. I grew up around those people. And like I said, they're off in the West Coast. So that's why I had to come over here to the South. But the other thing, too, that I want to talk about is I had an experience in April where I got thrown across my kitchen by something invisible. My rotator cuff is still messed up from it. Now, I'm healing crazy. I broke my back when I was 29 years old, and literally right before I had this experience, I had spent 2 years nonstop in bed, sleeping 20 hours a day. And if I wasn't sleeping, I was reading and consuming podcasts. Now, since this experience in February, I don't need sleep at all anymore. I can go 2 days without sleep. I'm fine. Actually, it's when I'm fasting and I'm not sleeping is when I'm doing my best connection with like my remote viewing and my spiritual work. It seems like that's when, I hate to call it the veil, but that's when that material gets thinner, whatever that separation is, right? That ceases to exist when I've been up for about 24 hours and I'm doing like either ketosis or I'm just drinking on water. And I don't do that. I don't usually do beyond a day. Two's the longest I've gone. And then I make myself get some sleep because I just get a little loopier out there. But I think that for me personally is what's allowed me to open up more spiritually. Or see better,
absolutely.
I guess.
I would agree. I think, what happened to you could be a couple things. One thing I would do is in your meditations, ask for what that was, because what it could have been is two things. One, you very well could have potentially been attacked. And that's the physical attacks. Like I said, I had something hit the cup as I was drinking it, like something took the bottom of the cup and hit it as it was in my face, and the cup like went into my face, like it hit me in my face, and I remember I put it down. I'm like, whoa. And like they do happen, but a lot of the times what you're going to deal with are energetic and mental and psychological attacks. I actually had this experience happen to me the other week, 2 weeks ago now. I kid you not, I had 40 spam calls on my phone occur back to back to back all different numbers. On my spam blocker, they were all verified numbers, but so my spam blocker didn't read them. But it was a different number every single time. But dude, I kid you not, when one phone call stopped, another one started, and it went like this. So this is what they'll do. They try to. One of the biggest things I'm going to tell you is when things like that happen, try your best to stay calm and not react. Because if you react, that's when the loosh comes out of you, and that's when they've succeeded. Yep, that's how it is. And so that's why, like, eventually I kind of realized what was going on. I was like, these motherfuckers are trying to harvest my loosh. So I fucking put the phone on airplane mode and freaking set it aside. And I just sat there, and then eventually it stopped. But then it stopped that night. But then the next day it started to continue until I picked up one of the calls, and I said, listen here. I was like, if this is the best you've got, like, this is sad. Like, this is absolutely sad. And as soon as I called them out, they ended up stopping. So, and then also, excuse me, too, I ended up, I've been targeted. They don't come close to me, for many reasons, because I have protection and I'm fully capable of protecting myself. So they do not try to get too gang stalkerish with me, but some things that have happened. I had all of the license plates taken off my vehicles, just mine. Nobody else.
I've had that happen to my car too. On different occasions.
It was my work van. Both the front and back license plates got taken off, and on my personal vehicle, both the front. Nobody else's vehicles, just mine.
I swear to God, oh my gosh.
And again, I was like, is this the best you've got? Because this is really sad.
Yeah.
And but what I think is you were either attacked or you were potentially shaken into a bigger awakening. That very well could be what happened to you. Sometimes, like, one of the biggest things I say, because when we talk about symbolism, like, every symbolic thing has its literal counterpart, and every literal thing has its symbolic counterpart. It's how the universe works. That's why Christ is an energy, but Christ is also a man, or was many men, and things like that. So, when you talk about you were thrown, you were shaken up, right? You think of that from the symbolic aspect, that you were shaken up a little bit, Dawn. You were shaken up a little bit, and Dawn. I told Dawn to get the 1 million lumen flashlight. So when the helicopters try to fly close to him, just shine that bitch up at him, dude. Yeah, they'll go away instantly. They might crash too, but yeah, it's
like a billion candle watts.
Yeah. They might crash too, but
that's freaking. I've got to tell you about this story I saw a few days ago, and I think it's part of it's in your state. There's all these like bald eagles and bears and elk that are migrating in droves to Utah. And earlier we were talking about like these false flags or things that they'll do, right? To get they'll upset the public, but not only that, but to get them to buy in, right? Like, oh, we need gun control, right? Exactly. And I think I was talking to Kelly about this, right? Because I've been doing massive amounts of research since right around after the new year with my friend who passed about using the frequency of love as a light weapon, right? Unfortunately, she was incredibly gang stalked. That's what took her life in the period of 3 weeks. Sorry, someone rang the doorbell. My dogs are going crazy.
It's okay. No worries.
No one ever shows up unless I'm doing a podcast, I swear. But in a matter of weeks, they literally took her down with what I call the Mountain Dews, right? For the sake of the censorship that's going on, which is bullshit. But I appreciate Dawn, because Dawn did a lot of shows with Renetta, and there's those of us who know that this was not an accident. This woman was healthy, she was vibrant, but she was not able to pursue her own ideas, and she had a lot of ideas. And so she put out a video about the frequency of love as a weapon. And so, you were talking about like animals, like when they can sense that something's going to happen, right? Like, I know my dogs can tell when there's going to rain. I can tell it's going to rain because my back hurts all the time. There's things that I think are natural, and there's things that I think are being facilitated. And this whole thing with these animals migrating, I think that it's something that's being done intentionally. Well, why do I think that? Because it's very specific areas that they're migrating from, and it's very specific breeds of animals, right? And I think it's all been done on purpose to get the attention of the public, so they start thinking, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen now? This is like biblical, right? I am not being disrespectful of anyone's belief system. I think there's something beautiful when you're able to practice your belief, and it's all in the state of love. But I don't think it's prophecy. If you have a fucking time machine and you're jumping around and you're invisible and you're intentionally creating things, half with the help of bloodline families that, however they're human or not, that they're able to facilitate on your behalf. And this is going to touch on what you mentioned with the symbols. I think that they have taken us from being telepathic and communicating like in emotions, right? And this way to a oral and written language. And there's a reason that you give your SIG nature, right? Like you're participating in the nature of the SIG language. I think that they have taken the tones and the symbols and the writing, and they have literally created cursive, or we're spelling, right? It's not an accident that they're called these things. And the hypnosis that you mentioned earlier takes it a step further, that people are not even cognitively dissonant anymore. That I think it is literally the frequencies and they've just launched another spy satellite in the last couple of weeks. I think all of that, along with the patents I found, it is intentional directed energy. And I think that's done on purpose because the brain is so sensitive and so easily manipulated and reprogrammed with scalar waves and things like that. So sorry, that's a little long-winded.
No, for sure. And let's touch on this, and then I gotta get to work tomorrow, so I do gotta hop off, unfortunately. But no. So the one thing I'm going to say is this, like you brought up love, and this is something I kind of want people to think about, is love is more than just an emotion. It's a power. It's a force. And yes, it can be used as a weapon. So that's something too. And that's actually true ascension in my eyes. I don't think true ascension is just all of us going poof and dissipating into a lofty 5D realm. I mean, eventually when enough of us get to this, what I'm about to say, something like that could potentially happen. But what true ascension is taking that divine love and channeling it fully here into your current avatar and imparting that divine love fully into every aspect of your life. That is true ascension. So I do think you're right about that. What I do think is potentially going on with things like that is they're trying to get us to manifest something like that for them. It's not hard. You could go take a frequency and play it out somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. And this particular frequency can cause animals to walk away from it, to move and do things like that. This is how our reality is manufactured. I mean, one of the best things I can even say about this too, I brought this up on a few episodes. This is how manufactured our reality is. So that bombing at the cathedral in Ukraine that happened, I think it was either end of 2023, 2024, you see little old women hoisting these gigantic, I kid you not, and I've lifted concrete being an electrician. The blocks they were carrying at least had to be 150 pounds each. And they were hoisting them like waiter trays in each of their arms. And they were walking out of this cathedral carrying these little old ladies that were probably about like 120 pounds soaking wet. Carrying 300 pounds. And like you, in order to be that light and in order to do something like that, you would have to be such a trained athlete. You would have to be an advanced athlete to be able to achieve something like that. And, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I'm a big guy. I can deadlift 500 plus pounds, but I cannot carry 250 pound chunks of concrete like I'm holding waiter trays out of a freaking building. So they stage these things, they manufacture these things, and they manufacture these things through the media. And this is what they get you to believe and to manifest for them, to buy into it. So what I think that whole mass migration of animals is they went out there, they played some kind of frequency, decided to make a media story, go, hey, look, guys, they're all coming from Yellowstone. Oh, man, the animals are migrating from Yellowstone. Oh, no, the super volcano is going to erupt. Yes. It's going to erupt. There you go. Even Sacred Sovereign Valley said scientists have used the frequency to help ocean animals migrate to certain areas to help revive the ecosystem. Exactly what we're saying. So, very good one, Sacred. Yeah, I'd love to see that for sure. Yeah.
I've done a show with Sarah too. She's cool. You'll like her.
Yeah, so like, but like that's what I'm saying. How manufactured again too. Another way this reality is manufactured there. So I don't know if you remember the school shooting in Tennessee, but
Yeah.
after the sheriff was done talking, there was this lady standing up next to him. Like they prepared her to get ready to go talk, and she gets up there and she's talking about how she survived one mass shooting. She's on vacation with another mass shooting survivor, and they somehow ended up in another mass shooting. You have a better time of getting struck by lightning 5 times in the same place in 10 fucking minutes than you do in a statistical stance from being in a mass shooting, vacationing with another mass shooting survivor, and then somehow ending up in another mass shooting. And she was just there to get on the mic to spew anti-gun propaganda. So this is just examples of how our reality is manufactured to elicit an effect from us. But nonetheless, I had a great time here tonight, Michelle. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. I feel so privileged and honored. And we're about to say goodbye. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find you at, or put any promotions for your workshops out?
Absolutely. We'll talk about the workshops first, guys. So basically, guys, you go to bgbodymindspirit.com. That is my website. So I do holistic life coaching. I do Kundalini yoga workshops. I do breathwork workshops. I do complete body, mind, spirit health programs because that is a trinity. All right. Your body, mind, and your spirit. And, all 3 of those need to be equally healthy in order for you to have a good quality of life here and to enjoy your temporary stay in this human existence, this dangerous, irresistible pastime. So, I set up, even if you want to try like thank you guys. I'm loving all the love from the chat. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. And I look forward to talking with each and every one of you and staying in contact for sure, guys. I'll tell you where to find me after we're done. And, so I offer 2-week trials if you want to test the program. I'll do 2 weeks of the program for you to try out, to see if it's something you want to do. And then if you want to take it beyond that, you can either pay me for 90 days, you can pay me for 120, you can pay me for however much you want to do and to work with the program. And of course, like I'm not just sitting here trying to make a buck. I'll work with you and, whatever you're going through, whatever you can afford, we can even piece things like if you want to start with just the breathwork workshops first to get a feel for things, totally. But, this is me, one of my goals here as a human is I know I have to work and I have to provide for myself. And I want to make my temporary human stay here as comfortable as possible. So that's really where it's coming from a basis of, and I do genuinely want to help you. So if you guys want to check me out, go over to, at least for my business, go to bgbodymindspirit.com. And you can find my website there. And other than that, you can find me as well as Don, who's in the chat, and on the Forbidden Knowledge Network, ran and owned by Chris Matthew. So that's www.forbiddenknowledge.news. And go over there. Don't just check me and Don out. Check everybody out. Our friend Diana, Transcending Ascension, is a new member to FKN as well. So welcome her aboard. And you can definitely support the documentaries. I would definitely say that because we have original content that's made with a lot of heart and no narrative. You don't really find that very frequently nowadays. And then you can find me on YouTube and Rumble, BGcast, no space. YouTube has removed their shadow ban on me. I'm actually quite shocked. So I'm the first guy who pops up in the maybe because I stopped questioning a few things and I started moving in other directions. Who knows? But I still question those things. I just don't talk about them as often. But so you can find me BGcast, no space, on Rumble and YouTube. Facebook under BGcast, no space. Instagram at BG2_cast. And on X, which I'm most frequently on, at BG3_ then cast. And then, of course, you can find me on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple, Rockfin, Spreaker, you name it. I'm on Podbean, I think, too. There's a couple of other places I've uploaded episodes and stuff before. But, mostly you can find me on Spotify, Apple, Rockfin, and Spreaker. And other than that, guys, come over and check me out. Join the BGcast family. We all learn together, man. And, I want to help you live the best life you can possibly live. And I want to help you learn with me, dude. Like I said, like even Cosmic Voice, he's 50 and he still don't have it all figured out. And I'll never tell you I have it all figured out, man. And we're learning together, dude. Like I said, every day new things reveal themselves to me, and I could change my opinion about something the very next day. And that's my biggest piece of advice I'll leave everybody with. Always stay open. Don't have attachment to any narrative or ideology, because the truth you know today might not be the truth you know tomorrow. So always keep yourself open.
Man, you're good. And we're still voting for you for president.
maybe in the enlightened Donald Trump timeline, I'll have a candidate.
All right, you all. Thank you for joining us. I love you all, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, guys. Have a good night.